What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Aftersound here, bringing you Splinterlands content every single day. We also stream right here on this channel every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday morning, so come by and say hello. All right, well, we have completed one full season of the Soulbound reward cards, and I wanted to just do a quick look at the overall print rates for where they are at, because if we extrapolate this out to, say, 1, maybe 2 years, we can start to see what the print rates will essentially end up being. Now, as it stands right now, this is completely open or up in the air, right? Matt has not said that there's any print rate or print limits, right? That we will be doing. He wants to see how this will play out over the next couple of months, and I'm actually okay with that. But if we take a look at where things are at from season 1, and then assume several things, right? Assume that we will continue at an even or maybe even increased pace. Then we can start to see what things will look like in, say, roughly 1 year. So that's exactly what I want to do with this video because, let's take a look, right? So you got your legendaries here. I'm going to say that these printed anywhere between like 2,600 to 2,700 on average. You have your epics that have printed about 11,300 or so on average. And again, these are not, this is not taking into account what's been combined, what hasn't been combined. This is the total BCX printed. Your rares here, anywhere between 71 to 73,000, and then the commons way up in the 300,000 range. So I actually want to take a look. I'm going to do the two extremes. We're going to look at commons and we're going to look at legendaries, because what I think is important to remember is the common cards, and I guess it does slide with the it's a sliding scale for rarity, but the common cards are the ones that hit their print limit first when you look back at like the Pellicor class, right? Those all hit their 100% print rate. None of the others did. And then even the legendaries from that, which was Jin O'Shaughnessy, Harklaw, and Jin Bilgeka, I think those were only in like the 60% range, maybe 70% range, right? But my point being that they were the least printed for the amount that was originally set. So when we look at this, right, and I'm just going to say, make it nice and clean, 300,000 times, let's say, 2 seasons per month times 12 months per year, that's 24 seasons, right? So where will we be in roughly February of next year, right? Mid-February of next year. Multiply this by 24. Wow, we are at 7.2 million BCX, which is roughly 800,000 below the Pellicors that were printed, which with a print rate limit of 8 million. So trending for the year, these are actually going to be less. Now, how could this change over time? Well, if new players come in, new accounts start earning, there is no limit, right? So if all of a sudden the player base increases by 20%, 30%, 50%, maybe even does a 2x, right? All of a sudden we start getting more people in over the next year with the marketing, with the marketing efforts, with the market potentially rebounding. It could be a slew of things. This number could rise dramatically to be much higher by the time we get to February of 2024. Now, when you take a look at the legendary cards, though, now this, on the other hand, we'll just say, I don't know, 2,700, right? To be kind of safe, times 24. This is only 64,000 by next year. We'll call it 65,000. And if you remember, the print rate limit for Harklaw, Jin Bilgeka, and Jin O'Shaughnessy was 200,000, which we did not reach, right? So I think we only reached like 130,000 or so. So at this point in time, we're seeing that even with the potions, because the potions are a factor in this now, the epics, and actually, for the hell of it, why not? Let's check the epics. We'll just say 11,500. Times 24 puts us at 276,000, which is much less. It's less than half of the 800,000 that was set aside for the epics, which was the Jin Chihuahua class, right? So ultimately, it's interesting to see this sliding scale. I like the fact that it is flexible for right now, but I do think, or at least I do believe, that there will have to be some kind of limit put in, or some kind of action taken within the next maybe 6 months or so. Now, that's not to say that these are going to be out of print or that they're going to be taken off randomly. But what I would expect is that, unless there's a massive growth in the player base, I would expect that they probably don't want to go higher than what they did for the Pellicor class, just because there's so many of those cards available. Now, the thing is, what's different about these cards is that ultimately they're not going to be inflationary in the sense that they are soulbound unless people will pay whatever the unlock cost is, and that is still TBD. But I put a video out saying that I hope that there will at least be a voucher and potentially the DEC burn value, which would be 5 DEC for commons, 20 for rares, 100 for epics, and 500 for legendaries. But Matt even said in a previous video or in a previous town hall that he would expect that the unlock rate would be significantly higher than whatever the burn rate is, right? He wants to make it so that people aren't just going to be exploiting this, farming the cards, and then selling them later. These cards, the whole goal for Matt is to not only keep the asset values, like maintain them, but have them rise over time. So in keeping with that, I would expect the unlock cost to be significantly high, which actually then makes it, makes me kind of eat my own words earlier, where maybe if we do go over 8 million for the common cards, it's not going to be that bad, because those cards will not be unlocked until we have the new players come in that make it worthwhile to unlock them. So I'm not sure where things go from here. When I look at the initial numbers, though, what this tells me is that with what we know for the upcoming, we'll call it 12 months, right, or the upcoming rest of the year, 2023, we have, there's going to be land involved. There's going to be Rebellion coming out sometime in Q3, and that's kind of it, right? But that's essentially it. So when the initial estimate for these cards came out as, they may be in print for 1 to 2 years, I immediately thought 2 years is way too long, right? But it's just with how slow they seemed at first. I was just like, okay, maybe 2 years makes sense if I want to max out my cards or whatever. Now I'm actually very much leaning towards the 1 year time frame for several reasons, right? We just looked at the print rate. That's one reason, because once we get to the 1 year mark, we will be closing in on where that last reward card class was, the Pelacor through Genoshanis class. The other side of it is if the team wants to continue putting out cards regularly, what they could do is, if you look at the schedule, right, of the cards that we'll be getting, we are going to finish out Chaos Legion soon. We'll have Rift Watchers. There's about 2 million packs available. Rebellion, we potentially get, I think, and I actually said this in the 5 biggest takeaway videos, I don't think we're getting it in July. That's already been stated as a stretch goal by Aggie. So August would be the earliest, but even Aggie has said maybe September. So I would say September is probably a good, time frame. So if you release a new core set, which is a lot of cards, you release a new core set in September of this year, well, you don't want to release a bunch of new cards right away afterwards. You want there to be some time. Well, what's the perfect thing to do? You wait a couple of months, you end out the year with Rebellion, and then early next year, January, February, once we hit the 1 year mark for these cards, where we will be getting close to the print rate. And again, it's not a limit. I'm just using the old framework as a limit, right? But we'll be getting to almost 8 million common cards printed. I think that we may start to see some of these get swapped out, and maybe they don't get swapped out in that way, but maybe it's not like a clean swap where it's just like, okay, we wipe everything out. But what they could potentially do is, all right, once we're halfway through the year or something, they say, we only want 8 million of these cards, like the common cards printed. So once these are out of print, we will introduce Rebellion common cards that will replace them. And then once these hit their print limit, right, the rares and the epics and whatever, so it could come in as a tiered system, or they could just do a clean wipe the way that they did this year, where it's just like, come February of 2024. And again, this is just speculation on my part. Come February 2024, about 4 to 5 months after Rebellion comes out, boom, they clean these out, they're done, and we introduce new Rebellion reward cards, which is perfect for that time. Everybody gets excited. There's a bunch of soulbound reward cards. It's the hype, and then you give it a couple more months, and we get the mini set, right? The Rift Watchers of Rebellion, whatever that mini set is going to be. And when you look at when Chaos Legion came out, we'll say like January, to when Rift Watchers came out, it was about 9 months, right? January all the way to September, maybe 8 months or so. Well, I guess you could go all the way back to December when, Chaos Legion was actually playable. So we will say 9 months. So if we do release in September, like that mini set may not come out until, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 months later. Again, I don't know what the new schedule is going to be, but I'm just saying there's going to be that time frame in between where they could release new soulbound reward cards. So that to me is kind of how I'm seeing this for the future. Again, there's so much is subject to change. We could get a spike in the player base. We could lose a lot of players. Who knows, right? Bot farms could decide to leave, and then all of a sudden the print rates for these will crater in terms of the speculation of like extrapolating out over time. But the way I see it right now, I think we're on track to do maybe a year, maybe slightly longer, and that makes sense with the print rates. That makes sense with the card set releases, and overall just kind of with the timeline of where the game is moving towards. So again, this is all speculation from my part. I don't, we'll wait to hear what the team says, but I would actually love to hear your thoughts. Does that make sense to you? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What are your thoughts for how long these go for? Are they printing too fast, too slow? But ultimately, they seem to be, to me, they seem to be very much on track to go for about a year or so. So that's all I have. I will catch you all in the next video and see you around the game. Take care.